the ability to sort of neutralise the conditions, but to mitigate the fact that the conditions are different. If we can somehow get beyond that and find the magical combination, I think it would be generally good for the game of Test cricket for it to work. So I believe we should keep experimenting, and I'm 100% behind doing it.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen they've been certainly some kind of success in Australia. I mean, Australia have now put into their calendar that they're going to, in every home summer, they're going to play at least one pink ball day-night Test match. It didn't really work in England, but I think England...
Hello, and we are back. The weather's looking quite dark. It's very dark indeed. Out in Seddon Park. Oh, they are putting the lights on, finally. I was asking why they're not putting the lights on. There's a big fat bunch of black cloud. They're talking about a storm in half an hour's time. It's going to dump down a shitload of rain.
Well, if that's the storm, maybe it'll have passed out. Maybe it'll pass over and drop it beyond the ground.
Possibly.
It's right above the ground.
Wow. That doesn't look good, does it?
It doesn't. Early night for us.
That
Early morning.
Quite apocalyptic. Right. Well, Jofra's going to come in. Well, I'd be bouncing them in this weather. It's very dark. It's very dark indeed. And Archer's first ball gets on the edge of Leighton's bat, scoots through to Pope, and there's no run.
Actually, if you get half an hour out of this before it absolutely teams down, and England can pick up 2 more wickets, it's not been that bad a day.
No, it hasn't. That looks like it's shitting down over there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it depends whether that's coming or sort of skirting around. Although the groundsmen all seem ready, don't they?
Yeah. They're all ready.
Racing, going to race out.
Wokes is having a chat with them. When's it coming? When's it coming? When can I get off and have a cup of tea? 173 for 3.
He's just had a cup of tea.
Yeah, he has, and he wants another one. It's 173 for 3 after tea. 54.1 overs bowled. Archer is coming around the wicket to Leighton bowls a nice bouncer. It's not even that quick, but it's quite dark. And he jags his head back and his hands drop, which is good. Good way of playing it.
Latham,
no run.
Latham's looking around, isn't he? He wants to go off already.
Well, of course he does. Bad light.
He wants a red inker for today.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see himself getting out in this little period, can't he?
Well, you can, can't you? The ground staff look quite anxious.
They're ready to go.
Yep, they are. Archer is in, and it's not easy to play out there, clearly. Straight after tea. A bit too leg side. He crashes into the thigh pad of Latham, drops on the leg side, and there's no run.
Is this kind of like the time?
Oh, here we go.
They're already on.
They're on. They're racing on. Absolutely. There's a lovely little vehicle with a lot of them jogging behind it, isn't
It's
there?
like a sort of beach buggy thing, doesn't it?
It's they're going out there
with a jumping deer on the front.
It's a John Deere car.
They have the Hessian, because that's what they do in the Southern Hemisphere. I thought they would with a climate more similar to UK. Not the extreme heat of Australia. They thought they had more covers, more sort of covers.
Yeah.
I think they prefer using Hessian and flat sheets for most of the covering.
I know, but I thought that in Australia was because it was so hot that basically it didn't really matter that the ground kind of got wet underneath. You kind of protected it with a Hessian, and then you dragged it off, and it dried up really quickly. But I think in a less, pleasant climate. I mean, as far as I can figure out, Australia's climate's quite similar to ours, isn't it?
I have important kebab news. From Joe Champion, who says that John Epps has abandoned his quest and ordered a pizza.
Oh man!
Well,
you know what? They put Hessian on the pitch, and then they put a tarpaulin over the top, so that's double coverage. I suppose that's okay. Best kebabs around here is Mazars. I think it's Mazars in East Dulwich on the High Street.
I think I've got a Mazars near me, actually. That rings a bell.
Fuck me, they did quality kebabs, mate.
I'm not a kebab.
I love a kebab. Mixed kebab is good. Dodgy doner every once in a while when you're really pissed.
No.
But actually,
no, you've got to go for the sheesh and get it cooked from scratch properly.
Well, exactly. If you do, it's just not that. It's quite healthy, really.
Yeah.
It's just meat and salad.
Yeah, but I bet you pick the tomato bits off, don't you?
Well, you ask for salad, and I always say no tomato.
So it's not salad.
No, I have salad. I have onion
right.
and lettuce. Occasionally a bit of red cabbage. Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of red cabbage. I don't mind a bit of cold cabbage.
In news from Adelaide, Ian Shaw says Australia win the toss and Payne decided to bat first. As Ali says, May. He's gutted. Says, hang on, what's happened here? Joe Champion is saying he's gutted about the fact that he wasn't able to get a kebab and he's had to settle for pizza. I don't think we're going to get any cricket for a while, are we?
No, it doesn't look that way. They're putting a whole bloody pitch covering on here.
Yeah, this is going to absolutely.
They've got an outfield covering that they're unfurling.
Joe Epps sounds like he's a kebab connoisseur.
It does. He's a
Well,
man. He's a man.
It looks like they've gone a bit early. It's not really pissing down at the moment, is it? It's not. Actually, it doesn't seem to be actually raining at the moment.
Well, there's an
a
umpire out there.
umbrella.
There's an umpire out there with an umbrella, so I kind of think it
maybe
might
it is.
be
Maybe
raining
it's
a bit. Some bloke's trying to stop it getting away from him.
Fat
that-
man's got stuck.
That's not covering the whole outfield, is
No,
it?
that's a run-up cover.
Yeah. So,
It is.
Oh,
raining.
it is.
It's
It's
raining
hammering
quite
it
hard.
down.
Yeah. The poor man with his kid
oh,
underneath an umbrella.
that looks depressing, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Looks very much like an English summer. Oh
Yes.
shit, that's shitting it down.
Well,
And they're all
well,
stuck
mind
under a
you,
tree.
you say that, but there's some people out there still no umbrella eating an ice cream.
Well,
You know, I suspect it's still quite warm though.
well, they're like hardy northerners, aren't they? You know.
Hardy Northerners? What, Northerners as in North Islanders, you mean?
No, as in Yorkshire people.
Oh,
The
you
people
reckon-
from Durham who go out when it's 10 degrees and they're still in a t-shirt and they're doing ice cream, you know.
Yeah, maybe. It's a fair point, I suppose.
Well, the whole square is now covered and the rain is coming down.
Yes, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it hasn't got. I think if anything, it's got actually lighter. Not the rain, the actual
Yeah.
brightness.
Well, they could have just wrapped the grain up on the camera.
They could have done that. It's true, but it looks as if that enormous cloud that was over the ground is not necessarily over the ground anymore.
There's a man in a red coat and a pith helmet.
Oh, what did we said the man who looks like he's taking part in Zulu, doesn't he?
Yeah.
It's all a bit
Well, not
bizarre.
wise, is it? You know.
I can think of some places you wouldn't
See,
go
George the
wearing that.
Poet refused his MBE this week.
Who did?
George the Poet.
Who is George the Poet? Oh, he's a bloke called George who's a poet.
Yeah.
But who is George the Poet?
He is I think he was born here, Ugandan extraction.
Oh, okay.
He's quite good.
And he turned down an honour.
He turned down an MBE. He's
Excellent.
got a big podcast out on the BBC. Everyone, you know, of course, the right wing got all upset about that, and it's like, well, you know, empire.
Did they say, oh, look, we've given a black... Was he a black man?
Yeah,
We've just given a black man an honour and he's turned it down.
exactly.
Oh, how dare he?
But he was quite right to, I thought.
Yeah,
But,
no,
you know,
well, I think...
Spin of the news.
I mean, actually, the honour system...
it's
I'm not
shit.
saying it's shit for people who deserve some sort of recognition for the things they've done in their lives.
Well, you could do it
But the
another
whole
way.
thing, you know, of giving
I'll tell you what
celebrities...
does annoy me
Yes.
about the honour system
Mm.
is exit honours for Prime Minister.
Oh, that as
Yeah.
well.
Office.
Yes, absolutely, totally.
That's just a thank you very much.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm going to
And
put
it
a
has
bunch
no-
of people who
no
fucking help me out into
relevance
the
to-
law.
yeah. Yeah, it's scratching each other's backs, isn't it, basically? Yeah, it's horrible.
I disagree with those with a vehemence.
The thing is, they know. I mean, the whole point of it is that they know that no one's going to report ordinary people being recognised. So they bung in a bunch of celebs and sports stars and
Yeah.
whatever to get the sort of headline, and then they might do a little bit on some nurse who's looked after someone for 38 years or something.
Make everyone feel good.
Yeah,
Having
exactly.
been involved with somebody with not sponsoring but championing someone to get an honour, it took us 5 years to get someone to get a BEM.
I'm still waiting for mine.
What does that
I
mean?
thought-
I want mine for services to broadcasting.
Absolutely,
Fucking hell.
we demand it. We demand it.
He was deserving on more than one account. I mean, he's worked with charities, he's got disabled kids.
Well, Jules has got one.
Many things.
Yeah, Jules has got one. I'm imagining she did something worthy
Well,
to
she
get
did.
it.
She works for Cricket Without
No
Boundaries.
Boundaries.
Well, I don't think she got it for that.
Ah.
I've heard
I'm
on
not
the
sure
grapevine.
she'd get it for her day job.
No. Well, who knows? I don't
Who
know.
knows? I imagine there's quite a few civil servants who've got MDs over the years.
But she's quite young to have one, isn't she?
Well, yeah.
Anyway,
Right, so we have rain. We might as well fuck off then, eh?
for a little bit. Yeah.
For a little bit.
Yeah. See what's happening.
We'll keep you in touch on Twitter. And of course, as soon as something happens, we'll be right back to give you all the action. that we
So,
don't know.
what have we got in the way of highlights to play?
We
Okay,
weren't doing highlights.
We were doing podcasts.
Okay,
And that
podcast.
podcast is pretty much completed.
So we need a new
pick another
podcast.
one.
Pick another
I'll
podcast.
pick
Just,
the
we're
one
just giving you a
about
flavour of what we
BJ
do.
Watling.
BJ Watling, there you
which
go.
is
That's
the
quite
podcast
topical.
before last.
Here you go. We'll be back shortly.
New faces, new keeper. New Zealand. The land of the long white cloud has a silverwood lining as England and a new management take on the well-oiled Kiwi machine in their own backyard. White ball or red, the Black Caps will take some beating. Flat white and semi-ironic beige merchandise at the ready. This is the Guerrilla Cricket Podcast New Zealand vs England preview special. Welcome to Gorilla Cricket Podcast, the weekly and sometimes more than weekly podcast from the world's leading independent cricket commentary provider, Gorilla Cricket. We're recording on the afternoon of Monday, the 28th of October 2019, just a few days before England's men's 5 T20I and 2 Test tour of New Zealand begins in earnest. By a delightful confluence of events, today is the 184th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence of New Zealand and the establishment of the United Tribes, an auspicious day indeed for hot black cap chat action. I'm your host, Knuckle Pandey, and this week I once again have a friend on the phone, but I've also got a friend in the room. In the studio with me is Tony Bishop. How are you doing, Tony?
I'm doing well, Knuckle. Doing very well indeed. Looking forward to this.
Yes, indeed. And one of the major reasons we're looking forward to this is because live via Skype is friend of the show, strokewaffle enthusiast, and, oh yes, former New Zealand fast bowler, Ian O'Brien. Kia ora, Obi.
Kia ora, guys. Kia ora, Kate to be here, Koi.
Delighted to have... Good.
How are you?
Fantastic. Yeah, we're good, mate. How are you?
Yeah. Teak.
TK. Head waggle. England are one warm-up game down, one warm-up game to go, trying to find those T20 combinations. Plenty of new faces in the England team, a couple of new faces in the New Zealand team, at least for English. And since we've got a lot to pack in, but yeah, just to set the scene, England starting the Chris Silverwood era, starting what it feels a little bit like sort of clearing the hangover after the World Cup. It was an interesting Ashes series, but a very odd one. And New Zealand kind of similarly in that, but I think New Zealand are probably come straight to you, IOB. New Zealand seems to sort of manage the emotional transition quite a bit better than England have.
I think New Zealand, well, not having to go straight into an Ashes series, I think is a bit of a big plus for the New Zealand guys. I think the high and low of making, and then it's classic. My kids who are 7 and 8, they still go, Daddy, how did England win the World Cup when they didn't score more than New Zealand? So they still crack me up and question the World Cup victory and how England won it. But I think it was tough for England going into that Ashes. New Zealand had a little bit of time out of the game to regroup, and I think that's a little bit of the reason why England weren't at their best in the Ashes. So it's been a good break for New Zealand, and this starts the summer pretty good over there.
Yeah, New Zealand have been in cricketing action, played a series in Sri Lanka, drew a really interesting test series, actually 1-1, some good performances on both sides, managed to draw that series without really Kane Williamson, and will again be without Kane Williamson for the T20 international leg, recovering from an injury that he sustained. Tim Southee, T20I captain, did captain a little bit in Sri Lanka. Ian, you sort of know or play with Tim Southee right at the start of his career. I don't know how much you know about him as a personality rather than just as the bowler we all see on screen hooping it round corners. But I don't know, Tim Southee as captain strikes me as an interesting one.
He's been in the vice captaincy role for I'm going to say a few years without looking it up. He's been in and around captaincy. He has captained the T20 team before. If you go back to when I was spending a bit of time around Southee, it probably wasn't something that he would have, or a lot of other people would see him moving into a leadership and captaincy role. He does have that ability to, and I wish I had this ability, to just kind of not let, lack of a better word, you just play dumb. You can play with a short memory, and things don't appear to hurt your performances. That's not quite the playing dumb is not quite what I mean, but the effect that he has, he's pretty, not going to say carefree, but he knows it's a game and he loves it. And I think it's a good progression for him. He has matured a truckload.
It's kind of a statement of belief, I suppose, or faith in a player, isn't it? Because I mean, England for the T20s have a similar situation where young Sam Billings from Kent has been given the opportunity to vice captain under Owen Morgan. I mean, that's not only saying we believe in you and want you in the setup, but we see you as being a leader on the field. It's kind of putting a marker down for belief in what they hope he'll achieve in the future, in a way, isn't it?
And players who didn't feature in the World Cup for different reasons. Southee was in the squad but didn't play a single game. Billings probably would have been in the squad but for an injury. But it's as you say, a show of faith. And one of the other reasons I wanted to pick it out is I don't know if that necessarily you would look at that team on paper and say that Tim Southey is a guaranteed starter in T20 in white ball cricket for New Zealand.
Yeah, white ball. Well, the 50 over stuff, I think it's a little bit different. He couldn't get in front of the guys that were going, because the quicks for New Zealand, the bowling attack for New Zealand during the World Cup was ridiculous. I thought they were phenomenal, and they didn't give Southey a chance to get a game, which is, gee whiz, that's pretty big. They didn't even. I thought they should have got Southey in for a couple of games towards the end of it. There's a couple of bits and pieces floating around where I discuss squad rotation in terms of getting more guys games, because at the tight end of the tournament, there was you wanted to be able to pick from 11 or 12. You wanted to pick from your squad. So I would have loved to have seen Southey play in the World Cup. There was 2 or 3 games to go, and certainly could have played, been involved in 1 or 2 of those. But look, he's doing all right. He's a bowler. He's got a captain, and he does have a decent record in T20 cricket, and he has done. He's been all over the world with it as well. So he's been around some sharp people, and I think because he is close and good friends, and they grew up together with Kane Williamson, there will be an element of osmosis, if you like, knowledge and ideas and team ethoses and how they work the team and get the best out of their players. So I don't mind it. It is an interesting one in terms of you wouldn't pick him from the outside looking in, but I don't mind looking at it. I don't think he's a long-term option, but and that's where I guess Billings becomes, he looks, that's a bit more of a nod to the future, whereas I don't necessarily see Southey as captain or vice captain a nod to the future if you follow that line.
I mean, there's a lot of players in this New Zealand team who've been together for a very long time. They haven't announced the test squad yet, but the T20I squad, Guptill Munro at the top of the order have been together for a long time. Ross Taylor seems basically immortal. The bowling attack, Bolt will be in for the fourth and fifth T20. Lockie Ferguson was a big part of that World Cup squad. Santner and Sodhi have been together for a very long time. So that, and in the Test team as well, you throw in BJ Watling, you throw in the openers, Ravel and Lathan. So New Zealand seem in a pretty good place, and just kind of the continuity, as you were talking about, between the ideas of Southey and the ideas of Williamson, Gary Stead taking over from Mike Hesson, very much in the same kind of very methodical, very 1%er image. England are in a bit more of a transitional period, Tony, in both the T20 and the Test squads.
Well, yes, I think that's right. But I think what's exciting me actually massively about this series is it's all geared up towards experimentation. I mean, to a certain extent, if you look at Banton, Brown, Lewis Gregory, so Keeper Mood and Parkinson, of course, are in both squads. You've got, and obviously Sibley for the Test. These are all players who you want to see how they get on. And frankly, if you're going to put them up against Trent Bolt, Tim Southey, Lockie Ferguson, that's a heck of an attack. If you really want to know under Test match conditions how well is Dom Sibley going to go, despite his fantastic record in the County Championship, what an attack to test it against. So, the same I think is true of Crawley as well. I think you've got almost a degree of freedom from pressure to be able to try new things. And I know that Ed Smith has talked a lot about squad rotation. And I think he feels that cricket should learn the lessons of football and rugby and do more of that. And I think this series is absolutely geared up for that. The other thing, of course, is to sort of take that thought of it, thinking as well about the Test series. It has this kind of status of not towards the World Test Championship in terms of points, which to me is...
Can you tell me why that is?
Well, yeah, that's a very good question.
Well, the logic that we've heard is that it was a pre-existing series, so came out before the World Test Championship, but that logic doesn't make any sense because these feature tours programs are planned years in advance. Everyone knew this Ashes series, for example, was going to be scheduled a long time. I can only assume New Zealand just get forgotten about. Is the only kind of my
I just
cynical
don't think
head on.
I don't think the numbers added up. They looked at who played who, how many times, based on the future tours program, and they had one series too many. It's probably as simple as that. But you have to ask yourself, if what the fuck has the last 142 years been about? So to me, it's 2 test matches. It's 2 test matches where England absolutely cast iron will try some exciting new talent that it needs to do, and it's going to be doing it against world-class opposition on their home patch. I mean, that's going to be a fantastic learning curve for the players involved, and it's going to be, I think, quite a spectacle for viewers as well. So overall, I'm excited, and the test points are neither here nor there to me.
Just picking up on what you said a little bit before, Tony, you said it was like a no-lose situation. I think you were I can't quite remember the phrasing you said in terms of the England players going into the series. I don't. Maybe that's why these test matches against New Zealand don't matter, because New Zealand is that forgotten country, that forgotten test, now a test force again. But I think these younger, less experienced England guys coming in, I think they've got one of the best bowling attacks in the world up against. So I don't think it is a no-lose sort of scenario.
I was thinking more for the administration.
Yeah,
I was thinking more for the administration at an individual level. Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, if you're Sibley and you're up against, as you rightly said, an absolutely world-class attack, that's going to be a pretty big examination first up. That's not a gentle introduction. That's a big deal.
One-on-one battle I'm quite looking forward to. Rory Burns was peppered by the short ball throughout the series. New Zealand have probably the best bouncer bowler in the world in Neil Wagner.
Yeah, they do. I mean, and you've got other players who have got points to prove. I mean, let's just move away. Let's look at some of the established players from the England perspective. I think Jack Leach, who I don't think he's yet really torn up trees for England. I mean, admittedly, his bat and his spectacle clock have become superstars.
He was brilliant in Sri Lanka.
He was, but you've got young Parkinson who tosses it up, gives it plenty of air, gives it a massive tweak. Leach is not the only game in town, and he's got a potential successor, either bowling with him or instead of him, at least for 1 or 2 games in this series, and I would expect to see that.
On those two, I think this is the problem that Australia have replacing Warne, and England are now trying to replace Swan. Is that you've got Swan could be both defensive and attacking, and I think Leach is only one of those. And the other name who you just said, which has just slipped my head,
Matt Parkinson, young leggy.
He sounds like a bit more of an attacking bowler. So it's a real, which way do you go with? Do you go with the seamers who can attack and you play a slightly more defensive spinner, or do you then play the more aggressive spinner that could go for more, and then you play a slightly reserved fast bowling attack? So it's a strange little mix, those two bowlers, because they're not the same. They're very, very different.
Well, they are, and certainly, I mean, if you look at Leach, of course, is left arm orthodox, and you've got a classic leg break bowler in terms of Parkinson. They're both moving it kind of into the right-hander, aren't they?
Away from the right-hander.
Or away from the right-hander if you're outside his off stump. But I'm not sure you'd say he's non-economical. I mean, the blast he took, I think Parkinson, 12, economy rate of 7.49, 21 wickets, about just under 15. That's pretty good.
And his championship numbers are solid as well. He's got a pretty good base action.
17 wickets, under 20.
Okay, are we putting Leach and Parkinson in the T20 team, or are we talking about Tests?
Well,
I think
Leach has never had a look in for England in the white ball stuff. Adil Rashid is England's key white ball spinner, and Matt Parkinson, I don't think he'll play every game.
But for me, quoting T20 stats for Parkinson is especially because leg spinners, back of the hand bowlers do have typically pretty economical stats in T20s. I don't think comparing them as test match players, we can do that. Because like, so using T20 stats to say he's not economical, I don't think quite.
No,
carries the
I don't think you pick a leg spinner to be economical. I think I think that's completely barking up the wrong tree in general. I think Matt Parkinson.
So that then dictates the fast bowlers that England can play. If you're going to play a slightly looser bowler, that's maybe going to take you a few more wickets, you then have to pick a slightly conservative other side of the attack.
England haven't liked to do that. Adil Rashid has taken a lot of wickets for England in Test cricket, but basically seems to be persona non grata because he's, perceived to be more that way inclined, more risk rather than more reward rather than risk, more sort of. He's a leg spinner. Leg spinners go for runs. It's going to happen. I don't think Matt Parkinson will play a Test. I think Leach will play. He'll play both Tests, and then you've got Jofra Archer and Stuart Broad, which is a really exciting opening pair. And then I guess it comes. Stokes can be a little bit that both kind of man for all seasons bowler, that guy who can be both an economical and an aggressive bowler, depending on what you need him for. And then I guess it's between Sam Curran and Chris Wokes, depending on who they want to go with as that sort of swing bowling all rounder.
Well, you've also got, don't forget, you've got Saqib Mahmood in both sides.
Proper quick.
Which is, as you rightly say, proper quick. He'll definitely get a look in because they will rotate the T20 squad. I think, as I say, and I don't think it is in any way, I mean, you were sort of slightly defensive thinking that New Zealand was, considered somehow lesser in some capacity. Absolutely not. But I think they might look, even between two tests, they may well take the opportunity to rotate because they want to have a look at people. And I've just got a sneaky feeling Parkinson, perhaps more than Saqib Mahmood, is one they really want to have. Unless he gets smacked out of sight in the 5 T20s or whichever of the T20s he plays, then they might rethink that. But assuming that goes well, which I have no reason to think it won't, I've just got this sneaky feeling in my water, and I'm here to be proved wrong, that he is going to get a look in one of the tests, because they for England they've got two stated objectives in life. The first is to make absolutely sure that they're fully ready and they know what their best guns are going to be for the World T20, and the other one is to win the Ashes away from home. So they want to have a look at, in really tough competitive conditions against high class opposition, how some players are going to do, and they're going to take the opportunity to do that.
So interesting. I'm just looking at the ages of this T20 squad, and this is kind of where New Zealand was when Southey and Williamson and Trent Bolt and Corey Anderson all started making progress. With that 21, in that early 20s age, and in this T20 squad, Tom Banton, Pat Brown, Sam Curran, Tom Curran, a couple of years older, but Lewis Gregory. Not Lewis Gregory. Matt Parkinson and Saqib Mahmood. That's a young group of guys that could, because you've got that group of guys, and they probably play quite a bit of age group stuff together as well, they will form that nucleus of what Williamson and Southey and Bolt are doing now for New Zealand. Give them 8 years, which is, I love that. I love
there's succession planning built into that. It stuck a little bit with Parkinson, but the fact is, Adil Rashid was held together by injections through the World Cup. He's going to play one. He played pretty well. He took 2 wickets, didn't he, at Lincoln in the first of the warm-up games.
Well,
he's not going to play all 5.
He missed the whole rest of the season after the World Cup because his shoulder basically fell off.
So, as you say, you have a left-arm orthodox. Who's the next cab off the rank as a leggy? Knowing that Rashid has these days some built-in inherent risks to his longevity, and I think they know that they're going to have to look for that. And they've identified Parkinson as a guy they're going to have some faith in. His numbers absolutely back that up. I think you might see more of him than you think.
I'd love to see it. Who doesn't love a wrist spin? His first class numbers are really solid. He takes his wickets in the county championship at 25, which is very, very good for any style of bowler, particularly a leg spinner in England. But it's also a reward for excellent performances in the Blast, and no one kind of personifies that more than Pat Brown, who is a proper kind of new generation T20 2.0 bowler. So many, all these skills. He's got a brilliant back of the hand slower ball, that fantastic off cutter, and can bowl at good pace when when he wants to. It's a bit more of a sort of T20 specialist pick. You look at the.
He doesn't want to be. Interestingly enough, he's gone on record as saying that's not what he wants to be. Although, last year's final was not this year's. He pretty much shepherded Worcestershire home, didn't he, to win that? So
he was very good in the semi-final this year.
Absolutely fantastic. He would have had 3 wickets at Lincoln if England hadn't been rusty and somewhat butterfingered. So he got 1 as it was in the end, snaring the leopard. But he would have had 3 more, because I think out of 4 catches dropped, 3 of them were off him. Yeah. So already on tour, we could have been talking about him going. He's almost, if you play your first warm-up game in your first England match and you take yourself 4 wickets for not many runs, you're going to be going, oh, he must be a shoo-in, mustn't he? And that was a pretty decent. I'd like to hear what Ian thinks about that. The side that they put out at Lincoln, but it looked like a pretty decent side to me.
As in the New Zealand 11 they were up
against.
Yeah,
the New Zealand 11 that they were up against.
Yeah, so if you guys like Anton Devcic and Colin Munro and Tim Seifert opened the batting, both guys who are going to be playing in the T20 squad. So this is not what you sometimes get in tour games where it's a bunch of guys at the start and at the end of their career. But just on Colin Munro, he and Martin Guptill didn't have a particularly good time of it in Sri Lanka, but it's a massive strength of New Zealand in the T20 squad with those two at the top of the order.
Yeah, they didn't have a good time of it during the World Cup either, and I know there's an element of it. It's a different format, but there's still an element of go hard first high in ODI cricket pretty much now. So they have a little bit less in the trust bank in terms of when does the dam break and someone misses out. I don't think it'll be Guptill. During the World Cup, I wanted Munro to not open. I'd had him having a couple of games off and trying Latham at the top, or there was a couple of other options I had during the World Cup. But
they ended up moving Henry Nicholls up to open.
Yeah, it didn't work. And that was completely the wrong thing. And I was, anyway. But they didn't have a good time of it in Sri Lanka either, which is there is cause for concern, and so that's a wee while without a good start at the top of an innings, which is then that's why New Zealand are doing okay in cricket, because the bowlers are kind of pulling it back. And I don't say that just because I'm a little bit biased as a former bowler, but it's New Zealand did hold. They led the World Cup in bowling stats for RPO and runs per wicket, and that's why they got to where they got to, because the batting wasn't good enough. New Zealand weren't getting starts and weren't finishing particularly well either, but bowlers held together. So that's that fun bit where that pressure of this is your job starts to eat away at your ability to play cricket. Take Joe Denley during the Ashes. There was pretty much in the last 2 tests, every day could have been career day. Every day in those last couple of tests could have been the last day he played for England. Because he wasn't having a good run of it, and so that then doubles down on yourself in terms of your own expectations. And you play and it's harder to play as well as you want to, or as well as you can do. So Munro and Guptill are dealing with that. They will know that there's a lot less in their trust bank, and this will be the last series I say that they back together if they don't succeed.
It's a big call with the records those two have got. Martin Guptill's obviously got a lot of. He's won a lot of games for New Zealand over the years. Colin Munro's got 3 T20 international hundreds and has been bashing it around all over the place to great effect all over the world.
Look, I agree. It's hard, but the record speaks for itself, and it won't be Guptill that misses out because of his. He has more in the trust bank, but if they don't work, it could be a change of position for Munro. I'm not saying he'll be out of the team, but it could be certainly a change of position and then a switch around of roles, which I don't think would be a bad thing. I don't think Munro's a bad finisher, so I don't mind. I think there was a part of me during the World Cup where I had Tim Southee opening the batting,
Sure,
New
sure.
Zealand may as well have had Tim Southey opening the batting.
Almost a pinch hitter role.
Well, it didn't matter because
get them
we
off
were
to a
one,
start.
one,
Statist-
we were one very few.
You might as well be 8 for 1. Tim
didn't
Southey 6 off 2 balls.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So there was a couple of teams and options that I ran through that, yeah, why not open with Southey, and that gets him a game. That gets him into the team as well, and it gives you another bowler. New Zealand were all right through the middle order. Okay, T20 is very different to the 50 over stuff, and the pitches will be decent. They won't be the deteriorating pitches that they played on during the World Cup or Sri Lanka pitches. So I think it'll be an interesting. I'm watching Munro and Guptill especially. That's the other ones for me that have to do something special.
Well, New Zealand do have power lower down the order. Colin de Grandhomme and Jimmy Neesham, certainly in the T20 squad, likely to be in the Test squad as well. Certainly, Colin de Grandhomme was very good in Sri Lanka. Jimmy Neesham's a player reborn. Was on the verge of quitting cricket a few years ago, but now back in the T20 team after a little while out. And Neesham has some Test numbers to back him up, and seems to have evolved as a bowler beyond sort of a slower ball merchant. I was at the New Zealand-Afghanistan game, and he took his maiden international fifer, and he was brilliant. Completely summed up the conditions better than anyone else, and that's. Yep.
No, I was there. He was terrible. He bowled crazy fast against the Afghanistan team, but he was terrible. His groupings, his pitch map, his plan, the performance versus plan was nowhere near, but he bowled the speed of light. So cool, he picked up wickets, but I'm not going to say I'm not having you say that he bowled well. It was he just bowled too fast for it, and that was that.
That was an absolute road at Taunton. That's one of the bounciest pitches I've seen in England, probably ever.
It's pretty green too, but a bit of it. I also have a problem with both de Grandhomme and Neesham playing in the same team. They're exactly the same, pretty much exactly the same player. Neesham a little bit quicker with the ball, and de Grandhomme slightly more powerful with the bat, but for me, they're the same player. New Zealand doesn't have a Ben Stokes, a standout, can't not pick him, all-rounder. Both de Grandhomme and Neesham are a little bit. I don't want to say they're not world class, but they're not the all-rounder It's two players. It's two guys where you would much prefer that just to be one.
Who do you think they might look at in bringing in the terms of the fact that I'm pretty sure England will rotate and experiment? I mean, there's names that I know have played some international cricket for sure, the likes of Seifert, Mitchell, Tickner. Are they going to get a look in with a view to the fact that if England are in experimentation mode? Wouldn't New Zealand be to a certain extent as well?
See, I want to see East Sodhi play more cricket, and that's where I would you'd have to leave out either de Grandhomme or Munro to get East into the team. It does slightly lessen the batting lineup, but I do think it adds to the wickets that New Zealand can take, especially in T20s. I want to see Sodhi play, and that does mean New Zealand will go in slightly light on the batting side of it, which is why New Zealand are playing both Neesham and de Grandhomme, because they add a little bit more. It's
a bit of an insurance policy.
Thank you. New Zealand's playing two guys where it would be better if it was one and then there was another specialist. That's what I would much prefer to see. And look, I'm a little bit out of New Zealand batsmen in terms of having seen or looked much about it. But there's always things like Astle. I think he's a pretty good opener in short format cricket. Todd Astle, not Todd Astle. hold on, I'm going to have to remember his name now. Latham, sorry, Tom Latham.
Tom Latham, yeah. Hamish Rutherford opened in Sri Lanka, flew halfway across the world to face one ball from Lassit Malinga.
Yeah, I think he's powerful, and I think he could be special, but he just hasn't been. Look, T20 is such a toss of a coin in terms of how a game goes. One guy can win a T20. That's why Rashid has such a great record in terms of wins and losses in the shorter format. But I do think New Zealand just misses that one standout all-rounder where we're both, insurance policy, thank you, Knuckle, that's great wording, that they haven't played them both.
Yeah, there's not a lot of world great all-rounders in most eras. England are very lucky to have Ben Stokes. Look, Sodhi and Santner are both in the top 10 for T20 ranked international bowlers. I'd be very surprised, and I think it'd be a massive mistake not to play both Santner and Sodhi.
Yeah, and then there's the wicketkeeper Tom Blundell as well, who again short format cricket at the top of the order can keep. So that gives that was another name I was looking for as well. Blundell at the top of the order. So there is a couple more options, but I mean Blundell didn't get a game during the World Cup. Him and Southey ran the drinks for the tournament. Again, disappointed in that because the people weren't scoring runs. But yeah, there's a few names, but there's a lot more known names in the New Zealand team than certainly this England team that's going over to New Zealand.
Yeah, 100%. The one name conspicuous by his absence is Kane Williamson, who, when England were last in New Zealand, it was the T20 tri-series with England, Australia, New Zealand. Simon Dool basically called for Kane Williamson to be dropped from the T20 squad during that tournament. He then went on and was the leading run scorer in the IPL that year, and
he also the game that Simon Dool previewed and said that Kane should be dropped. He also was then man of the match in that game, and Simon Dool had to award him the man of the match trophy in check. So it was a beautiful moment where they both where Kane was sheepish because that's Kane and played it down, and Simon Dool was a little bit. You could see there was a level of embarrassment and had to acknowledge the performance and that. Well, Simon Dool may not have been wrong. Kane Williamson just had a very, very good game. I would like to see Kane Williamson play fewer T20s. I think he's a superb player, but I would love to see Kane Williamson play more 50 over and more Test cricket. I would rather not see him wasted in terms of all the space that you have in your lifetime. I'd rather see him have a little bit more time off, especially in that little brain of his. I think it's a calm exterior, but I think we've got the duck web feet underneath the water that we don't really see, and I doubt that he has as good a sleep as some other people. I reckon he does have that.
Captaining in all formats cannot come without its toll, and it's not just the on-field stuff about who bowls when and do I have short fine leg up or fine leg back on the boundary. It's all the stuff that goes with it. It's the and then the challenges of being that every country comes with its own challenges. The New Zealand thing is that you suddenly go through these periods of sort of feast or famine with New Zealand, where suddenly they don't play for 6 months, and then suddenly they have a load of series close to each other, and just that kind of almost that constant struggle for relevance a little bit, which is weird when I think New Zealand are quite comfortably the second best Test team in the world.
Second or third, yeah.
I'd go on that. I mean, that's a decision.
Probably second equal, but yeah, I agree. I think New Zealand got a great record in Test matches, home and away now, and that's a lot to do with bowlers win Test matches, but I think they've got a pretty handy group of fast bowlers.
Oh,
and
Satner,
who brings that calm.
And Lockie Ferguson now fit and firing. Got over his broken thumb or whatever he had. I think it was thumb, wasn't it? He has sustained in Sri Lanka. I mean, with him backing up the Bolton Saudi, that's a pretty sharp attack, I reckon.
Yeah, and this is that bit where as a fast bowler, as a bowler that tried to bowl as quick as I could, Lockie Ferguson going up against what's his name? Oh, God, why does my brain do this? In terms of the Chris Jordan, Chris Jordan. Joffrey Archer, thank you.
Yeah.
There's a nice little matchup. Okay, no, Joffrey's not in the T20 team, but there's a matchup there that I look forward to because they're the guys that have got the billing as the quickest in the teams, and I love watching those sort of those matchups. I think they're good fun. Will Lockie get a go through the test? Yeah, probably. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, there's plenty to like in New Zealand's bowling attack in red ball and white ball cricket. England, to try and get a little bit of a march on the conditions, have brought in the latest in a line of spin bowling consultants. I wrote a piece last week about England's constant refusal to actually hire a proper spin bowling coach, which just baffles me. But as far as consultants go, Jeetan Patel for a tour of New Zealand is pretty good.
Yeah. Look, Jeetan debuted for Wellington the season before I did, and so we played majority of my cricket with Jeetan in the squad in the 12. And sadly for Jeetan, he spent a lot too much time as 12th man, whether it was domestically or internationally. He would just be 12th man so often on tours away and tours and series at home, and even in domestic cricket he was so often a 12th man. So he's a little bit of a bloomer now because of he's getting regular cricket. And if he had got that earlier in his career, I think he would have been I think he would have been such a different player. Him in New Zealand because I think he matches up quite nicely with Leach in terms of how they bowl, in terms of their what they're trying to do. So I think it's a nice match, and I like the use of locals in that way. Look, I think Silverwood's got a massive task on his shoulders. But I do look forward to the way. Okay, this is slightly off top. I'm looking forward to the way he handles Adil Rashid, how that relationship works. Just having a look at past Essex squads and teams, there's a lot more, shall we say, Desi players, Asian players that have had success, and also internationals that have come in and played as overseas roles that Silverwood's been a part of. And so I'm looking forward to seeing. Because from the outside looking in, I think we all see that Adil Rashid has maybe not been treated the way he would like to be treated, and there's some angst and animosity somewhere in there.
You're pushing an open door with me there, Ian. But yeah, Adil Rashid's a world-class white ball spinner, and I think could have been, in another regime, another life, maybe could still be a really useful operator in Test cricket. And this is kind of the point I was trying to make with the short-term consultant thing. When England were last in India, they had Saklan Mushtaq as their spin bowling consultant for the first 3 tests, and Adil Rashid was taking his wicket at 28. Suddenly Saklan leaves, Adil doesn't have that guy to bounce his ideas off, and he's out there on those pitches with India, racking up those big scores and having to bowl all of these overs, and suddenly he's taking his wicket at 70.
Well, I also think there's that Desi link there. There's that subcontinent link with Saklan Mushtaq and Adil Rashid. So there's a crossover of cultures. There's a crossover of personalities, and I also think there's a slightly better chance. I think a greater chance of there being a good mix with Silverwood. Going through the players that Essex have produced or have and have been around. So there's I say Silverwood would be more aware of the needs of the requirements to get the best out of a player like that, just through experience of being around those kind of players. Because we haven't seen enough British agents in English cricket. It's not even anywhere near the right amount.
Jeetan Patel has been a fantastic.
So Patel,
sorry.
yeah, no. So Jeetan Patel again. So it's a different ethnicity, if you like, but there's still the Desi culture that that they will be able to share. That will hopefully
an understanding of those unique challenges, and that they do exist, and that it's not sort of an identikit thing of this is good bowler X. We'll treat him like good bowler Y and Z. And I think that lack of cultural sensitivity has been the case. There's a great example of it at the end of the 2016 county season. Rather, Rashid had to miss that last championship game because his grandmother was deathly ill. He was about to go on tour. He didn't know, not to put it in very fine terms, he didn't know if she was going to be alive when he got home. Yorkshire blunderbuss out this statement saying that he's elected to leave, and Yorkshire, I say this as someone who grew up in Yorkshire, Yorkshire don't have a great history of treating people of South Asian descent with sensitivity, but Silverwood got a lot of success out of Ravi Bopara, who was another guy who was a player of British Asian descent who was handled quite badly and misunderstood through the early part of his career, but has had a great late blossoming. It's also good news for Moeen Ali when he gets back into the England setup.
No, again, and that's why I'm starting to think the Silverwood appointment makes a little bit more sense to me. I'm not saying it didn't make sense at the time, but it's making more and more sense to me now when I reflect on, again, the Essex mix of cultures and what Silverwood will then bring to the England mix of cultures. So I'm starting to agree with it more and more. I didn't disagree with it, but I'm starting to find more reasons.
I'd love to have seen that PowerPoint presentation, because that's supposed to have really impressed the powers that be, didn't it?
Well, they didn't like Gary Kirsten.
They didn't like Gary Kirsten.
Gary Kirsten wanted to. We talked about this at the time when England appointed Chris Silverwood. Tony, I think you were about to praise Jeetan Patel's incredible success with Warwickshire.
Well, I think I was actually. You're quite right, Knuckle. I mean, he comes with the benefit of having helped jack up a misfiring Warwickshire side and always able to take wickets. So he knows the English county game well.
Yeah, he's very good in New Zealand conditions where he uses more drift. He used more drift than spin because it didn't really spin a lot for him in New Zealand. So he became very good at using the overspin and using the not going to say the speed variation, but using the angle of seam release through air as opposed to off the pitch. And again, I think that's another asset to having Jeetan Patel, Jeets, and with these guys, it's not so much about trying to turn it off the straight. It's about the Vittori-esque kind of thing where it's the air bit. It's not off the pitch. So he will be able to give a lot to those England spinners. Yeah. And again, he also helps because of just local knowledge, because he's been to most of these places and played on most of these grounds. So there is that as well.
That's why I wish he was around or someone of that kind of level of experience was around for longer than just this sort of 5 T20 run. It would be great for. I know he's still playing, but he has expressed an interest in wanting to become a coach, and I think it's I'm going to bang as many of my pet drums if that's not mixing too many metaphors at the same time as possible. But having guys who've got that specialist knowledge actually around working with a team over a long period of time, I think can be beneficial. And you're absolutely right, pointing out the thing that you can control as a spinner is hand to pitch. The pitch to batter is not really something that is in your control. It completely depends on where you are. But if you're solid in your release and you think and you have control over, do I want to point this? Do I want to put a lot of side spin on this? Do I want to put a lot of overspin on this? Do I want to slightly undercut this? That thing you mentioned, Daniel Vittori, an absolute master of bowling 6 deliveries that would pitch in exactly the same place, but would all get there slightly differently.
And that's a massive skill. So for me when I was bowling, that was just body release. I wish I could have claimed to have done that, but Vittori was genius like that, and why why I hold him in such a high esteem home car. But Patel will bring this level of, exactly like you said, Knuckle, the undercut and then the amounts of over and top and round the side and through the middle variations that he has, and that having great success with Warwickshire. And I really wish that he had a better run in New Zealand, because he as we're seeing now, he is that good.
Certainly is, and his numbers don't lie in a team that, as you say, Tony, has been struggling for to get any kind of performances going certainly in Division 1 of the Championship at least. We'll do a little bit more on the England Test team, and someone who's in one and not in the other. England sort of were the beneficiaries of angry Johnny Bairstow coming back into form during the World Cup, but I think Chris Silverwood might be trying the same thing, and Ed Smith leaving him out of the Test squad with Josh Butler taking the gloves.
Well, I think by including him in the T20 series, because he could have been a candidate to be rested, but I suspect they know his mentality well. They've said, you're going to be a senior player, you're going to be a leader in this T20 side. He's already gone out and made 78 not out to see England home in that first game, and he knows he's got stuff to work on in his game. I mean, you only have to look at the number of times he's bowled in all forms of cricket to realise that there's a technical weakness there, and he's recognised that, and he wants to work on it. At the same time, they're giving him the space to do that while keeping him in the family. I think that's actually quite sensitive and smart man management from England.
And taking the gloves off. Sam Billings will be keeping in the T20s.
Concentrate on your batting, Johnny.
Well, quite. I mean, Ben Folkes can probably count himself a little bit unlucky to not be taking the gloves in the test team. But just try. You were around professional dressing rooms for a long time. Are there players who need that little bit of something to rail against to get we know there are, because Johnny Bairstow is one of them. Who are some players you played with who kind of needed an enemy a little bit?
Okay, so the first one that comes to the top of my mind is not a New Zealand player, it's Galton Gambier.
Sure, that makes sense.
He scored his last Test 100 against us, against New Zealand, against the team that I was in, and every other team since that series against New Zealand that he played against, no one talked to him. They just left him alone. Galton Gambier needed to get into a fight.
Very, very angry man.
To get the best out of himself.
Very angry man, still is.
But he deliberately did that to get him into his place, to get him into his mood, to get the best out of himself. So he would kind of pick a fight, if you like, with the bowler, because that got him going. No other team spoke to him since that Test series, and he's never had another. I don't think he's had another Test 100. So there are guys that do need to be in a space. There are guys that do need a cuddle, and there's guys that need to kick up the backside. I played with Mark Gillespie with Wellington again. Myself, Jeets, Mark Gillespie all played together at the same time, and Mark Gillespie was a guy that was taken out into the corridor quite often, and we could hear the conversation from inside the change room. It was that loud that the coach was having a proper pop at him. But I think the coach was doing that because, Mark Gillespie kept on going out there and ripping up stumps when he'd been barreled, and I felt bad for him because he was reinforcing the kind of treatment he was going to get from the coach by taking wickets when he was yelled at. You've got to get out of that circle, but that's what got Mark Gillespie going. So yes, some guys do need to be angry. And Bairstow again. Look, kind of some of the words he said during the World Cup and during the Ashes, like not smart. But again, is that a deliberate thing to get him into that? Shall I say the Ricky Ponting FU mood? That he needed to have success, the Gambier mind space. So he may need to rally, to be the antagonist to get himself motivated, to feel that the whole world's against him, So therefore he fights harder against the whole world. So and that's why cricket change rooms are such a mix of mental and mental issues and personality problems, because everyone's trying to get the best out of themselves. It's a very selfish world, but we've all got to be accommodating to trying to get the best out of everyone else while you're looking after yourself. So it's tough. But again, I look at Silverwood and I think, yeah, not bad. I like it. I quite like it, because he's had some tough Essex changing rooms. He's had some tough times down there to deal with.
And when he was playing, some Yorkshire dressing rooms with some bloody big egos in that group.
Yeah, he was at Middlesex as well for a while.
Yep.
Yeah, didn't do a bad job there.
Yeah,
as a
so
player.
I like it. I like that, and yeah, Bairstow. Look, I don't think taking the gloves off him will do him any favours. Actually, I think that Bairstow does need that blanket of security, the cuddle of having the wicket-keeping gloves. I don't think having the gloves taken off him will make his batting better.
But will it make the England team better because you've got I was answering the other question, a better wicket-keeper?
But in terms of folks, or Butler.
Well, I think Butler's probably a better wicket-keeper than Johnny Bairstow.
Will keep in this series, I think, won't he, Butler? So for Test matches,
and
he's got a point to prove as well. I think Butler.
You've got Butler and Butler and Bairstow that kind of, I'm not going to say cancel each other out, but it's that Niche and de Gronholm scenario where you're playing two guys where you'd rather play one and have another better player if there was. Look, I'm not saying Bairstow's not a good player, not a great player. No, I'm not going to say he's a great player. No, he's a very good player. But you would rather have, in the perfect world, you'd probably rather have Butler as a keeper in the short format, and then play an extra whatever, as opposed to having them both in the same team and having one running about the field. I don't think it will do Bairstow favours.
Well, he knows he's got some competition for that Test place, because you'll have Sibley, Crawley and Pope.
I don't think that motivates him. Again, I go back to, I think what motivates Bairstow and what we've seen when he has had success is when he's put the whole world against him. And when he said something media-wise and the whole world is against him, and that's when he's had his most success. I don't think the competition for place is what gets the most out of him. I think it's when he has the chip on the shoulder. I think that's when he's at his best. So, look, again, happy to be proved wrong. I don't know Johnny, but that's what I see from the outside, if that makes sense. Just trying to read personalities and trying to read body languages.
There was also an ex-England captain that was particularly needling him, wasn't it? That really got got him going.
That's not behaviour, but it's probably not public behaviour we should reward. And it's interesting to hear you say that you were a bit concerned about basically incentivising people to shout at Mark Gillespie.
Yeah, I hated that. I felt horrible for Mark. Look, Mark and I didn't get along particularly well when we were playing in the Wellington team. We were all right, but I think we both annoyed each other. But a few times I was like, Mark, look, why don't you go out and bowl ridiculously good without being shouted at? Because you're just going to keep getting shouted at. And like I genuinely felt horrible for the guy.
Because you're empathising and wondering what it'd be like to be shouted at.
Well, I didn't want to be shouted at, and I'm sure no one likes being shouted at. And he used to go out having been shouted at in the grumpiest mood. Wasn't necessarily the best in the field, but boy, he would bowl fast, and he would bowl good. So it was that reinforcing. You've got out of the happy triangle, and you're in the bad triangle where you get shouted at. You go and bowl well, you get celebration, and then you get shouted at again. So it's not a good place. And I don't like. Yeah, I wish Mark would have slightly off topic now. I wish Mark had had success, a lot more success, without having that needle, point to prove. And I guess there's an element of Bairstow that I kind of see in there, but Bairstow brings it on.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, and you see the intensity in Johnny Bairstow. You know, where does all that energy go? You know, it's fine if you've got an outlet for it, but what happens when you don't have that outlet for it?
That's why I don't think taking the gloves off him is, because that takes away his intensity. It takes away. I think it will take away from Bairstow as opposed to add.
Well, it's an interesting point, and it's one we look forward to watching with interest. His spot in the middle order has been taken.
Always wrong. Yeah. Always happy to be wrong about those sort of things, and I do hope I am wrong, but that's how I feel.
Yeah, as I say, it is something we'll watch with interest. He's a psychologically fascinating sort of character study from the outside. Johnny Bairstow. His middle order spot, you touched on him, Tony. Ollie Pope, averaging 70 in first class cricket outside of his England career, looks like a guy whose time has come.
Well, I think so, and I think the thing with Pope, of course, don't forget he had the shoulder that he did. So he missed most of the season. I think he had five innings towards the end of the season. He made the squad of the cricketers' team of the season just on the basis of that. Managed to rack up a double 100 and 100 in the same game against Kent, I think, from recollection.
That was his first game back after 5 months.
He looked the business when he started off against India, although he never really got himself a high score, did he? He made pleasing looking 15s and 16s.
Yeah, and again against a really good Indian attack, and batting in a position that wasn't common to him is the earliest he's ever batted in his career. England have seen how, and I know Rohit Sharma scored a lot of runs in South Africa, but England have seen what happens when you try and get someone to do something that they haven't done very before at a higher level. It didn't work with Jason Roy. Ollie Pope in the middle order seems to make a bit more sense, and Joe Root's back at 4, which should, in theory, we were talking about how to get the best out of Bairstow. Joe Root seems to have been trying to be batting at 4 pretty much since he took over the captaincy.
Well, yes, he has. I mean, you're assuming that Sibley is nailed on to open.
Sibley, Burns, Denley, Root.
Yeah, Denley, I think, won't be too sorry to drop down to 3. Sibley again just racks up runs in a side that if you take Sibley out of Warwickshire, then they'd be down the knots. If 2 teams have gone down. He's just had a phenomenal season. He's not the fastest of strike rates, but it's not about that. He's got stickability at the crease. He's got test quality about him. Interestingly enough, both he and Rory Burns both from Epsom, so you can have an all Epsom opening partnership there. And a couple. But you've also, don't forget, you've got Crawley, Zach Crawley coming in. You've got Pope as well. You've got Sibley. When you look at that and the way they're, it's not that easy for Bairstow, who we were talking about, to see that way back in. If all those 3 do well against an attack like New Zealand, England are going to have an embarrassment of riches. Now, law of averages says that if you've got 3, let's say, big tests there, if 2 work out, that's a great result. If 1 works out, that's an okay result. If 3 works out, that's nirvana. But they just might.
Yeah.
They just might.
And Crawley looks like the spare batter in the squad, just on the strength of the numbers. His first class numbers are nowhere near as good as Dom Sibley's in the last year. But it's a couple of accumulators at the top of the order. And Ian, you mentioned Tom Latham earlier. Tom Latham might well be the best Test opener in the world, and just based on solidity, and not just, obviously he's very talented as well, but based around solidity and patience and knowing his game.
And the blessed thing about Tom Latham is that if Watling's out of form, New Zealand can play another batsman because Tom Latham can keep. Watling is very rarely out of form, so Latham can solely focus on one and not need the other. But just going to the point that you were just talking about trying to mismatch, trying to get players into teams and then putting them into different roles and having them batting in different positions. This was one thing that ended my white ball career for New Zealand. But the broader point is that you have a look at when New Zealand started winning more games, and that was under McCullum and Hessen. Now, was it McCullum? Was it Hessen? don't know, don't care. But what I will, what it is for me was that they picked guys to play in their position. They didn't necessarily pick the best player that was available, but they picked the best player for that position so they could go out and do their thing. They didn't have to adapt, they didn't have to adjust. They knew the routines, they knew the anxieties, they knew what they were doing, because that's why they got picked. And they did have success playing in their position. So I hate now, and because of this Hessen and McCullum era, New Zealand had the freedom to just go out and do what they do, as opposed to fudge it and try and do the best they can in someone else's position. So I would hope, that's why I hate Engley getting shoved around during the Ashes. I hated it, because it's just like you're not giving him the best chance to have the success, and you're making him disposable because he's slightly older.
Disposable is absolutely right. Joe Denley was sort of the ultimate expendable batter, and he seemed to be the sacrifice for about 3 other players.
But it was also by default. I mean, the Jason Roy experiment, that one of the 70s progressive rock band, just didn't come off. It didn't come off having him at the top of the order. You needed a solution up there with Burns.
Worked that much better at 4.
And Denley was the man. Now you've got, with this forthcoming Test series, you've got classic red ball.
You've got specialists,
long-term specialist. And so much hope is being placed upon him that you can afford to let Denley perhaps play in a more natural position to him. But I don't think everyone said we need to find a way to get Joe Denley up opening. I think they said, crikey, we've got a problem as an opener. Joe, someone's got to step up. Can you do it? And being a willing soldier, he said yes. But I don't think it was any kind of game plan to try and put him there, other than Roy's failure.
No, absolutely. And New Zealand have found an opening partner. They've often had one opener, but Jeet Ruvel has had a lot of good scores. Finally got there. Was excellent in Sri Lanka. I'm struggling actually to remember a sort of nailed on, a situation where you could nailed on say these are New Zealand's 2 Test opens.
Yeah, John Wright and whoever he was batting with was probably going back the longest term. See, the thing I like about the 2 New Zealand openers and Ravel is that he has played absolutely 0 memorable innings, and I love that. There is nothing about Jeet Ruvel that I can remember about his batting. I know where he gets out, and I know where he does score runs, but there's nothing memorable. And I love that he's number 1-2 pick in the New Zealand team for being not memorable. That's an amazing thing to do as a cricketer, to just do your stuff. And I think he's very good. And I think there was an element of who was the opener from Lancashire?
Asif Hamid.
Thank you very much. He did his thing. He was found out, but he just did his thing. And his short stint early in his career, he didn't adapt, and there was nothing memorable, but he was quite good. And I love the nothing memorable players. I think they need to be heralded a little bit more.
Well, the sad thing there for to a certain extent is he was just potentially showing some glimmers of form towards the end of the season. He made a ton against Middlesex, as I recall, but too little, too late, as well as being, I think, having a degree of injury prone. But he was, he was famous for being called Baby Boycott. So his memorability was his lack of speed in the way he accumulated his runs.
It's the what do you say about Asif Hamid, or in this case Jeet Ruvel? He's still batting, basically. An undramatic Test opening partnership is pretty. In many ways, the whole point of a Test opening partnership is to be able to take all the drama out of the situation. Kane Williamson has a little bit. He's a lot more eye-catching because he's such a glorious stroke maker. But there's never a sense of jeopardy when Kane Williamson is batting. And you mentioned BJ Watling. BJ Watling. I love BJ Watling. He's a wonderful cricketer. He is a really good wicketkeeper. Surprisingly good wicketkeeper up to the stumps for someone who grew up in South Africa and has now played in New Zealand for a very, very long time. and whether it's a case of supporting a more aggressive batsman or coming in a crisis situation, BJ Watling is incredibly valuable to this New Zealand team and one of the very best in his position in his keeper batter role in the world.
Do you know where I'm going to go again here? A very unmemorable player. They've done some very, very, very good things, but a very unmemorable player. He's not. No one would ever write him down. Who's your best Test wicketkeeper? Who's your best Test wicketkeeper batsman? He's got to be in top 2, top 3, easily.
But you have to think about it.
Yeah, but he's not a name that comes to mind, so he's forgettable, but brilliantly forgettable. Like in the Jeet Revolve sort of scenario, the old school does his job, hits the ball where it's supposed to go, and catches it when he's got to catch it. And there's a nice thing, and I especially love watching unmemorable 60s in 60, unmemorable 60-run partnerships or 60 runs for batsmen in a short format game. There's something beautiful about unmemorable innings because they hit the ball where it was supposed to go. There's nothing manufactured. It's just cricket. But they did it cleverly, smartly. They did it the way they do it. So it's not memorable. And BJ Watling's a very unmemorable cricketer, and that's why I love his style of cricket. Just gets it done with. Just gets it done.
A recurring theme on this show with great sort of accumulators is that if you're not sort of paying, obviously we do ball by ball, so we're paying reasonably close attention. But if you're watching a game, you look up and suddenly, Joe Root's on 30. He was only in 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, that's a classic mark of his batting when he's in form. You do suddenly look up and you go, how did he get to 30? When did that happen? Because he's just so smooth, and it's not necessarily spectacular from the off.
Kane Williamson's another perfect example. He's got, he scored 4 boundaries. Why don't I remember any of them? Oh, that's because they were all middled through 4th slip.
They were all down the 3rd man, yeah.
I like Ian's idea. You give Kane Williamson a rest from the shortest format of the game and focus him on what is captaining an outstanding Test side. And
why is there 5 T20s, gentlemen?
Well, because there's of the World Cup next year.
Well, there's 2 World T20 World Cups before the next 50 over World Cup.
Yeah. So
I don't really care. Why is there 5 T20s?
Because both sides. I can certainly speak for England. I can't speak for England. England have the stated objectives of winning the T20 World Cup and beating Australia away from home in the Ashes. And so the focus has gone off the one-day game and gone on to the shortest format of the game because it's the next big shiny thing on the horizon.
I dislike 5 T20s. Make 1, maybe 2 to start a series, and then rack it. There's an element of, I think Simon Doull was the first one I heard say it was rack off international T20s, and I wouldn't mind that. Get rid of T20s at the international level. It's a great domestic and domestic product. It does bring people into cricket. And leave it as a domestic.
It doesn't lend itself so. I'm with you, Ian. It does not lend itself so naturally to a series. If you think back over great T20s I have watched, you very rarely put them into the context of a series, unless it's a World Cup. England's last World Cup. I go along with that, but generally you just don't think of T20s that way. They're kind of the after the Lord Mayor's show once you've got the Test cricket,
or the
one-dayers out of the way, or the warm-up. But you've just got a different situation here, where countries are switching gear. They're looking ahead to that World Cup, and that's why there is the degree of experimentation that there is.
And also a desire to give Root and Butler and Stokes a bit more of a rest, and Archer
because
a bit
you
more of a
already
rest.
know what they can do.
Yeah, and they're all mentally knackered after the World Cup.
I've got to be honest, I'm very much looking forward.
Riddle me this, gentlemen. Would you get any more enjoyment out of, say, watching South Africa versus Sri Lanka T20 or Chennai versus Mumbai T20? Which one is going to get you more interested?
There's probably a higher concentration of good players on a CSK. We're back, not with cricket but with news. Play has been abandoned on day 1 in Mount Maunganui. sorry, not Monganui, in Hamilton. So we will be resuming tomorrow. We'll be resuming half an hour early, so we'll be on air at 9:20 p.m. UK time. That's 10:20 a.m. New Zealand time. New Zealand. Some time ago, just after tea, 173 for 3, just 3 balls into that session. So please do join us again tomorrow. But until then, from us here at Guerrilla Cricket, it's goodbye.
Guerrilla Cricket.